So, grad student, right? Going to be grad student. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to, well, I have the honor and the privilege of introducing a friend and now colleague, Emily Mullins. Emily is a I can't talk today, a double Elliott School alum, which is particularly awesome. So she has her undergraduate degree from us and she has a master's degree from us. She has worked through various other jobs, but I'll just focus on the most recent. Most recently, she was at Coke and she was in charge of some of their internal communication. So she has some good stories to tell on that. But right now, she is the communication director for the Wichita State Foundation. And if you are not aware of the Wichita State Foundation, you soon will be as soon as you're an alumni, because they would love to talk to you. But that's the topic of Emily's speech today. She's talking about a campaign that they did. She's going to give a little background of what they're trying to do, and she's even going to pull it all the way through to show us what worked and what didn't, and hopefully where they're going from here. I also wanted to mention Emily is one of our One to Watch winners, which is an award we give to some of our outstanding alumni who are in the first 10-ish years of their career post-graduation. This is kind of a tip of the hat from all of us to all of our Okay, that was good. To our recent grads. So congratulations to Emily.
Man, I was not nervous until she said that. Now I feel like I have to live up to some hype or something. But anyways, I am here to talk about our campaign Founders Day of Giving, which hopefully all of you heard about in the last month. This was a campus-wide / national campaign for our alumni and donors, and we're going to really dive into it. But before we do, I wanted to give you all a brief rundown on what the WSU Foundation actually is. So how many of you before today had any idea what the WSU Foundation did? Okay, that's sad, but also not surprising. So the WSU Foundation is separate from the university. It is a nonprofit and it functions as its own organization, but it's affiliated with the university. So basically, we do all of the private fundraising to fund things like scholarships, buildings, maintenance, programs, the scholarship fund for every single college, which can be used for student travel, guest lectures, all of the things like that. So we have relationships with donors around the world, and we ask them for money. So that's why Lisa was saying, once you graduate, you're going to know who we are, because, you know, we'll be asking you for more as if you haven't paid enough, right? So that's kind of what the WSU Foundation does, and it's really just a group of people who are so invested in the success of the university and the students that they want to continue supporting that throughout their entire lives. So it's really cool. The people we work with are amazing, but that's just kind of the foundation in a nutshell. So Founders Day of Giving was a single 24-hour day of giving that happened, like I said, on campus and for all of our donors around the world. So this was the first year that we ever did it. And it was kind of, the idea for it came together before I joined the foundation. So they were looking at, what do we do to facilitate giving centered around like one day? And we do things like Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So we ask for donations then. We do a little bit of marketing support around that. They have a Grata Woo Week in the past where it was just a week of giving, but it didn't really have a lot of support. So it didn't see like a ton more gifts than what we would just normally see from our donors anyway. So they were looking at what other universities do and what our donors were asking for. And they were asking for one centered day of giving so that they know every year, like, this is the thing that we do on this day. We're celebrating Wichita State. We're giving to it to invest in the future of the university. And it's really hyped up. So students are involved, the campus is involved, programs are involved, and everyone wants to be a part of this. So I joined the foundation back in February, and they were like, this is what we're doing, go. And I was like, okay. So to start with, there were a billion pages of starter copy. I had no idea what all was involved in a single day of giving. So I went out to every university I could find that had hosted a day of giving, and I was like, what assets do they have? And if they had it, I wrote copy for us, and I put it all in this huge document of starter copy. And then I floated that by everyone, got feedback, and we started to kind of narrow it down. So it got better. We came up with a campaign slogan, which was celebrate our history and invest in our future. So because it's called Founders Day of Giving, we're really recognizing all the way back to Wichita State's actual founding, back when it was Fairmount College. So we wanted to draw on that history and those years and years and years of support for the university, but also let people know that they're investing in the future. So it's only because of that past that we are able to continue to today. We wanted to really inspire people around that. So while the university was officially founded on September 11th, that date means something different to most people now. So we decided to celebrate on September 14th. And so we kept narrowing it down, and we decided to do an ambassador program because this is what we saw a lot of other universities doing. And they would tap on people throughout the university to use their networks to spread the word instead of just relying on our own reach, which is basically the people we know, right? So we worked on copy templates for social media and emails, and then we also created design templates. So we wanted this to be as easy for people as possible, that you could download an image, upload it to your Instagram, copy and paste the copy, and go. Like, you did not have to do work. And so that was our goal. So we took that page, that huge document of copy, and we started to narrow it down and chop it up into all these different assets. So once we were doing that, we had to define our audience, which I know is why you are all here to hear me talk about. So we had to narrow it down from, we want everybody to know about Founders Day of Giving, and actually make some specific groups. And yes, I 100% put gifts in this to distract you all from looking at me. So we narrowed down our audience, and we were looking at our established donors, our past donors. So we call these, we have, terminology. They're called Libunts and Cybunts, which means like last year, but they haven't given this year, or some years, but they haven't given this year. But it's easier to just call them past donors, not current donors. We wanted alumni to be involved. We wanted to get Shocker parents to be involved. We wanted faculty and staff to know about it. We wanted students to know about it. And then we also wanted our campus ambassadors to be super informed. So we're looking at all of the different ways that we communicate to these people, because they all want to be communicated to in a different way. So our established donors have the benefit of they receive a monthly newsletter from us. So that was a really easy place to hit them. We could get them in our email newsletter, and then we could also get them in our print newsletter that we send out quarterly. So we made sure that we were writing stories to include in that each month. Our past donors, we could reach out to them with postcards, which is kind of what we already do, but these could be designated specifically for Founders Day. So instead of just sending them their normal, like, hey, we hope you want to continue supporting WSU, we could say like, hey, we're having a Founders Day of Giving, and we really want you to be a part of it. So we were just changing communications and touch points that we already had with these different groups of people and tailoring them to support this campaign. Alumni, we also wanted to reach out to them and kind of pull on, we know you know what it's like to be a struggling student, right? Like, we know how important it was to you to be supported. And so we looked at that segment of 1 to 10 years out of college, which are considered recent alumni, which always makes me laugh because I am not yet 10 years out of college, and I do not think of myself as a recent alumni. So it's a broad definition. But we were looking at like, what would inspire, when I was writing it, I was like, what would inspire me? Like, if someone sent this to me in the mail, it was like, think about when you were a student, what would I want to read? And so I used that to shape the communication to that group of people. For Shocker parents, we did something a little bit different because these are people, they're not alumni, they don't fall into any of the other groups. Some of them are alumni, but they get their own communication. So we're looking at the Shocker parents who are not alumni. And so we actually did tabling events at WSU Move-In Day and at the Involvement Fair, which was more for students. But for the Shocker parents, we were there when they're moving their kids in, saying like, this is what we do to support your students. Like, this is how we're involved on campus and in their lives. So even though students don't really see the WSU Foundation, they're behind the scenes in a lot of things. And so we wanted to be more present and front and center for those parents to see, like, maybe not this year, but maybe next year you'll want to give. And maybe after your student graduates, you'll want to give back to the university that helped them succeed. So we're just putting ourselves front and center when they're ready to do that. Faculty and staff, we tapped into the WSU Today newsletter, which is like Shocker Blast, but for faculty and staff. We also got President Muna to send a message, and we tapped others on the president's executive team to send messages to their reports so that they could send messages to their reports. So we kind of had this like trickle down messaging that we used to get faculty and staff involved as well. For current students, we put an ad in the Sunflower, and this was really to get students to be an ambassador. So we know that students don't have the capacity to make a large donation, right? And we would love $5, but also there are costs associated with credit card giving. So $5 is actually like $1. So we don't want to put that burden on students. We would rather have you be an ambassador for the programs that you love and say, hey, this program is fundraising and this is what that fundraising does. Like, it allows us to go to the bowling championships, or it allows music associates to send them to conferences and that kind of thing. So we wanted students to talk about that and share their experience to inspire people who do have the funds to give back to those programs and give them a reason to give to it. So that was what we wanted students to do. We also put some things in Shocker Blast as well, just everything linking back to our central articles about the day of giving and our landing page that had information. Our campus ambassadors, we actually treated as an entirely different audience because they needed to be more informed than everyone else because we wanted them to share and get people to give, right? So we made sure that they had all of the templates, and we created a web page where they could go to download absolutely everything they could possibly want. So we had email signature graphics. We had, like I was saying, the copy for emails for social media posts. We had suggestions on how they could share their story. And basically everything we could possibly think of that they might find useful, we created. We're like, you want GIFs in Instagram? You got it. We're putting it out there. So we really tried hard to make sure that they were as informed as possible. We actually hosted a Zoom training session for those ambassadors to have that information to share. So like if they had questions like, when can people actually start giving? Like, when will these pages be live? When does all of this happen? And what happens if someone sends a check and it doesn't come in until after the Founders Day of Giving? Does it count? Or what about match gifts? Like, how are those working? How do you designate the funds? Like, is there a timestamp? All of those questions. So we wanted them to know the back end. Like, this is what we are doing and how we can help you be successful. So that was kind of all of our audiences wrapped into one. So then we had to refine our strategy. And as I said, we went back to the billion pages of starter copy to determine each audience, edit the language for consistency. So there were paragraphs, like an intro paragraph, that could be the same across every single piece of communication, right? And then we would have a body paragraph or something that would maybe be a little bit different, tweaked to each audience. And then maybe the close is the exact same request to visit this landing page for this information. So it was really just finding ways to make less work for ourselves by going back to that original copy doc. And I was making changes and writing copy until the day before. So it just never ended. But it was a rinse and repeat thing. So every time someone was like, oh my gosh, we forgot to do this, we need copy, I was like, you got it. So that was refining our strategy. And then this is kind of what that looked like. So this was an example of a postcard that was sent out as a save the date about 2 months in advance. So the first one was a save the date that went out to our donors. And the second one was a save the date that went out to the people we wanted to be ambassadors. So that one is less of a save the date and more of a, please sign up to be an ambassador. Here's how you can help. And so then this on the back of the postcard would be what we changed. So like this copy would be different for every single postcard for like the groups that we sent out to. And so that's kind of what it looks like as it takes shape. So then we had social media posts, we had our Horizon newsletter. So this was the print edition that we sent out. That went out at the end of August. Yeah. So it was a full month ahead of, well, I guess about 2 weeks ahead of the date. And then we had buttons that we sent out to everyone. So this was an ambassador button. So anyone who signed up to be an ambassador, we mailed them a button. And we were like, please wear this. And then we had those at tabling events and whatnot. So we wanted to be sure people knew what Founders Day was. As far as how the ambassador program actually worked out, the goal of this was to be where people already are, right? So we can't reach someone who's only following the student involvement page, not following any of our communications. They're not in our donor list database. We can't reach them, but the student involvement page can reach them. And so we wanted to be sure that we were there. And I have to say, like, the people on campus really, really stepped up, and every single program that we had involved was advocating for this. So these are just a few of the posts that we saw on that day. So we have the SGA posted about it. The business school actually posted, it was a reel, so I didn't get the screenshot at the right time, but their dean was matching dollar for dollar up to $5,000 of donations to the business school. And so they posted that as a reel, and it was really successful, actually. And then Shocker Success posted. So all of them had links that were linked directly to their program page. So if people clicked on that, which I know on Instagram you can't, but copy and paste, they would go to the actual page to give directly to that organization. So they didn't have to jump through a bunch of hoops on our main landing page where they were like, oh, find your organization, search for it. And then there might be a second search bar to get to the actual organization to give. And then you can type in the amount. It was right there, and they could give in like 2 minutes. So we were trying to make it as easy as possible. Some of the ones that were actually really successful were the people who made it their own. So these, aside from the reel, these were, well, that was a stock image, and this was an image of the Shocker Success Center. But then you see Shocker Bowling and WSU Seal, both really took this campaign and applied individuals to it. So this was an alumni of the Shocker Bowling program, and he made a video talking about why it was important to support, and then gave a call to action to people to donate $22 in honor of the 22 national championships. And like WSU Bowling was incredibly successful on this day because people were so inspired. I think they had the highest amount of new donors donate. Not positive, but I'm pretty sure it was them. So that was really cool. And then the student, oh, they changed their name. I always call it student involvement. SEAL. They used student assistants to tell their story of like how SEAL helped them in their college experience. And so that was really cool to see as well. So the actual results of the day, was it successful? It was hugely successful. So as far as our ambassador programs went, there were 88 programs who participated in the day, which was incredible. And that's not counting like the general funds for the colleges or anything. That is just pure student programs. We had 129 different ambassadors, and the program donations alone was more than $74,000. So that goes to the individual programs like Shocker Bowling or Music Associates or Performing Arts Angels or SEAL, like all of those got to raise this much money, not individually, but all together. The top fundraising group was Music Associates, which surprised all of us, and we were really impressed. So it was really cool. You know, you always expect like men's basketball to get the most donations, but it was Music Associates. So that was really cool. As far as the overall results, we had 618 total donors. So those are people who gave on one day. And there were 174 first-time donors, which is huge. That is the largest amount of first-time donors we've ever gotten in a campaign for the Wichita State Foundation. So that was really incredible. The total amount raised, which included matched gifts, was $186,500. And first-time donor gifts made up almost 10% of the amount raised. I think that's not counting match gifts, because I'm not sure that math adds up otherwise. But that's a really impressive amount for first-time donors, because typically those first-time donors are younger. They're a younger generation of people, which is the audience we need to be looking at if we hope to cultivate them as larger donors in the future, right? You don't want to approach someone when they're 55 and have money to give who hasn't heard from you for the last 30 years, right? So we really want to be a part of people's lives and have them continue to see value in the university. So that's kind of what Founders Day of Giving is about. It's being with students while they're on campus and after they're no longer here. So it was a really exciting first-time event. We're gonna do it again because it was successful. So if you're all still here next year, you'll see it next year as well. But that was basically how we did it. It was awesome. That's all I have, but I will take questions. Yeah.
What was your role at Coke Industries?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So what was my role at Coke Industries? I was the internal communications specialist. So I was in charge of the global internal communications that we send out. Yeah.
When you were thinking of audiences to target, were there any audiences that you brainstormed and that you ended up not using, and how did you make the selection?
Yeah, so the question is if there were audiences that we did not choose when we were brainstorming that. There were a few. So basically we brainstormed all of the audiences that we thought we would send communications to. And I think the only ones that we didn't end up using specific targeted communications for were too segmented. So we kind of broadened the scope. So there were some, like we had recent alumni and other alumni who hadn't given. And so we kind of lumped them together instead. It just did one communication instead of the deeper segments that we originally planned for. Yeah.
You mentioned this pretty briefly at the beginning, when you were working on collecting the body copy, kind of what did that process look like?
Yeah, so question about collecting the body copy and how we did that. I tried to think of every asset that we would need. And so I think I mentioned when I started, I was looking at what other universities had done. So I would find one, their landing page. So I found University of Virginia because they have a like incredibly successful giving day. And so I went to their landing page and I parsed through all of the information on that. They had a really, really nuanced ambassador toolkit as well. So I was like, everything they have, we need. And then I went to their social channels. So I looked at their YouTube and saw what videos they made. And I looked at their Instagram and saw what kind of posts they were putting out and found their hashtags and clicked on their hashtags and looked at what other people were posting about that giving day. And so it was really just diving deep into what other people had done and then seeing like, okay, what do we need? And so then it was a matter of actually writing that information, which was the hard part. So I started with an article. So kind of like, what is Founders Day of Giving, right? Because it's the first time we'd ever done it. And so putting together what our strategy was for it and what we wanted from people and why we were doing it. So that as a base article, it was probably like 300 words or less. And then I drew on that for everything else. So it was like the language, the tone, the passion, you know, like that should all be in that first starter document. And then you can put that into everything else. Yeah.
What do you feel like your guys' biggest area of improvement was with this campaign?
Our biggest area of improvement was 100% staying on task. So project management. Like I said, I was working on copy up until the day before this happened. So it was our first time doing it, and that will improve in future years because we now know what we didn't know leading up to this event. But there were things like, oh my gosh, the thank you page that pops up after someone donates doesn't have anything on it, you know? So we're scrambling to create copy for that. So it's just really thinking through the timeline of when do we need copy for each thing? When do we need that copy to be plugged into a design for each thing? When is that thing going out? Because there were some that we had scheduled for a month in advance that didn't go out because we missed it. And it was like, oh shoot, like, okay, let's change this and we'll send something else, you know? But yeah, project management for sure. Mhm.
You mentioned like how, like staying on task was an area for improvement.
Yeah.
What did you guys' timeline look like for this? Like, how long did it take to get all this together? Was it like a year?
So I'm not sure when they started doing the research on whether or not we were having a giving day. But I joined in February, the middle of February, and worked on Founders Day the entire 6 months, 8, however many months that is between February and September. Yeah, and there were like ebbs and flows to that, right? So like copy is always the first thing you do in a project, and then it goes to design, and then it might come back to me for copy editing and final proofing. But it was largely like the bulk of my work was probably March, April, and May, and then it kind of came back in like July and August to being more work. So yeah, we were working on it for that entire time. Yeah.
What, if anything, have you found that didn't work quite well? Do you plan to change for next year's?
That's a good question, actually. So you asked what did not work well that we would change in the future. I think a lot of so we hosted a post-mortem after the event, which is where you talk through all the ways that you want to improve the event. And the biggest one was on our side, so internally with project management and making sure that we were reaching those people. I don't know that there was anything that we saw no value in. I think if anything, we would try harder to do the more nuanced, targeted communications versus having the broader ones that we ended up sending. But that also comes down a little bit to the budget for those, so whether we can be as nuanced as we want. Another thing that I think we could be a lot more successful in is social media. So and I actually highlighted these, which I know Kylie's back there, so your face is on this. But we we posted these why give, and I think we had like 8 or 9 of them that we posted over the course of 2 months, I want to say. And we posted these across all social media platforms, and they had student stories or donor stories that were linked to them. So this was all content that we already had, either from students we had talked to in the past or donors who we had written stories on. So we didn't like go out and seek new feedback for that. I think those could be improved and be a little bit more genuine by having like videos of those students.
My question is kind of unrelated to the giving campaign, but you're obviously one of our ones to watch, so we were fascinated and impressed by your entire career. So I'm curious, what was it like navigating the job change from Coke to the foundation? How did you know it was time to make a change? What's that first job change from the first big job to the second is kind of a thing. Like what was that like for you?
Yeah, strange. So I knew it was time for me to leave Coke. I felt like I had gotten a lot out of my role and grown a lot there, but I wasn't seeing continued opportunity to grow in that role or that department I was in. And so I was looking for other opportunities, and the WSU Foundation popped up. It was a great role, very fun, like lots to do. But really, it was a matter of coming back to Wichita State. So I love this university. It was so funny because on my first day back here, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm coming home. Like, this is weird. Yeah, it was bizarre. But it is very, very different. So I went from working at an organization that was global, that had 136,000 employees who I would send a newsletter to every week. And now I work at an organization of 50 people, give or take. And it's very, very different. So I interact with a lot fewer people. It's a lot more nuanced, like I can talk to the president of the WSU Foundation anytime I see her, but I didn't see Charles Koch very often when I worked there. So, like there's little differences. I think probably the biggest thing is learning how different organizations work. So like the culture and where you fit in that culture, how people receive feedback and how people give feedback. That's probably the most difficult part to navigate in my experience. But it's all all helps you grow.
Did you have, I noticed that this campaign was mostly over through socials and
Mhm.
email and mailing, but did you have any in-person like tables or like anything going on during the actual day?
Not during the actual day. So we had actually planned to be tabling in the RSC on that day, and had ordered probably 300 brownies for it. And our campaign director was actually out on maternity leave, and the student intern who was going to be tabling it got a better internship somewhere else, which we were very happy for her. But also we did not have the staff to go table it that day. So we just nixed it from our plan and had them send the brownies to our office.
Are you still eating brownies?
No. I think there was like an event the next day or something that they ate all of them. But yeah, we planned to in the future. I think that it would be beneficial just to actually have that day of visibility for students versus kind of the lead up. And then if you weren't on social media that day, you were like, oh, weren't they going to have a Founders Day? So yeah.
So I know we've talked about it, but just for everyone else, where do you hope to see the campus ambassador program expand to? Such as tabling, do you think it'd be a good idea to get those students who talk about it, get them out there and get them talking to other students?
Yes. So Kaylee was asking how we hope to grow the campus ambassador program and having FaceTime with people. I would actually like to grow that beyond just Founders Day of Giving. And this is like not on the table at the moment because I have done absolutely no work on it. But KU actually has a student endowment association where it's a student-led board. And they basically are the face of the KU endowment for students. And so they kind of spend time with the student body, getting information on student needs. It's very unique. And I think that would be really cool to make sure students actually know what the WSU Foundation is and does. But B, give students the opportunity to see the back end of that and see how gifts make an impact on the student experience here. Because I know when I was in college, I had 2 small scholarships that were amazing. I wrote my donors a thank you. That was it. I didn't see how those donations were impacting my student experience. And how would you, right? But we want you to. So I would like to see it continue to grow and have a lot more FaceTime with students so that when Founders Day Giving is here, there are already those ambassadors in place who have their networks and they have shared what good this does. Yeah.
I'd like to ask
Yeah.
a question. You talked a little bit about the idea of getting a young person who may not have 6 tons of money involved because it kind of sets the idea. You learn how to be part of that organization and then give later. Can you talk a little bit about how that is used as a strategy?
Of getting
People, let me back up.
okay.
I'm not asking this. In campaigns in particular, we
Yeah.
are forever being told, we don't want you to go after Generation Z because they don't have any money. We only want you to go after big people. And we, as a class, usually decide that that's not always appropriate, that perhaps there's an advantage to getting young people, even if they only give $5, $10 and become ambassadors.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, do you agree? And would you recommend that why is that good?
Yes. So this is a really interesting point that Lisa just brought up about whether it's worth targeting Gen Z to give, right? Because you don't have money to give. I know, I was there. It's impossible. I completely disagree with that thought that you shouldn't be targeting them. And there is some research out there about millennial giving trends and probably carry over to Gen Z. It's not complete, obviously, because research takes a long time. But it's that millennials specifically will pick a couple of organizations that they give to throughout their lifetime. And that's where they're going to leave their money if they leave their money somewhere. So if we are not in their lives and a part of their lives until they're 45, 55, they're going to have picked those 2 organizations, right? Like maybe they care about animals or the Salvation Army, and that's where they're giving their money. And then we come along and they're like, yeah, I see it. I love my time there. That's amazing. But I already give, and I give to these organizations. So it's a little tricky because the foundation is made up primarily of our development team. And so they are development directors who work for each specific college to fundraise for that college, and some for the university in general. But they are not going to spend their time cultivating young donors because it is not worth their time, frankly. Like, it just isn't. But as a marketing team, we want to be sure that we are making sure young donors know about the foundation and are thinking about it before they leave the university. So that see it as a place to give back to instead of just a place that you are paying for 10 years, you know? So yes, disagree with that, but also it's tricky.
You guys measured, obviously donations come in to see how effective it was. Were you guys measuring social media engagement, and what was the engagement you guys saw during the event?
We are really bad at that. So he was asking about social media engagement the day of. We were interacting with people who used our hashtags or tagged us in posts. We weren't necessarily measuring engagement of our own posts, which to an extent we had kind of posted to death about Founders Day of Giving, so we didn't think that there would be high engagement on that. But we were more focused on promoting what other offices were doing to show other offices that other offices were doing things. So we really wanted to kind of like inspire people like, oh my gosh, we just reposted 20 other ambassadors' posts about this day. And so hopefully they're giving, and that would inspire other campus offices to be like, oh my gosh, we dropped the ball, we got to post. So we saw a huge uptick in people tagging us and using the hashtag and all of that. We did not necessarily see a huge uptick in our own engagement. But yeah, that's some areas for improvement. Our new digital marketing coordinator is sitting right back there, and that will be his job. Yeah, anybody else? Yes.
Were you able to track the demographics of who gave, whether they were in-state, out-of-state, or?
Yes, I do not have that information. Yeah, I know they did track it to an extent. Mhm.
Any general tips and advice as people graduate and move on?
You know, don't stay somewhere you hate. Yeah. Yeah. But also, like kind of like Jessica alluded to, navigating new jobs, you very much will know when it's time to move on from a place. And it's okay if that's not at your 3-year mark that you expected it to be at, you know? I think that that is a change in the younger generations, is that you are not going to stay with a company for the sake of staying with a company and showing loyalty, right? Because if it's a bad culture or just not a culture fit, it's time to go, you know?
We've had conversations before where part of that is knowing that you're bored, that you've done the same thing over and over and over again, and
Yes.
you got that.
Yeah, yeah. I have read this, I don't even know who originally said this, but if you're not growing or earning in a role, you should leave it. So, and I find that very valuable, that if you're not continuing to bump up your pay or continuing to grow your skill set, and it doesn't have to be both, it's great if it's both, but most of the time it won't be, then it's probably not a job you should stay in.
Yeah. I applaud you for mentioning that too, because the alternative I think a lot of people see is quitting in place.
Mm-hmm.
And like your employer can tell
Yeah.
you're not in it, right? So
Mhm.
you make the decision for yourself, say, you know what, I think for me, it's time to do something else.
Mhm.
That's better than them going, Emily's not been Emily lately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, quiet quitting is like 100% set boundaries and what is within your role and what is outside of the expectations for your role. And if they demand you do it anyway, be like, okay, would you like to pay me more to do that? But like, it's not fun to quiet quit. It's not like beneficial to you either, because if you are quiet quitting, you are not growing. And that's like, it's, you're kind of just stalled. It's a bummer. Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, we are going to thank Emily. So this is a thank you gift from
Oh,
Kelly.
thank you.
So congratulations on being a one to watch.
Do I get a poster in the Elite School?
People poke the teeth out of people.
So no,
Posters
okay.
in there, but somebody went through and poked all the teeth and the eyes out of everybody, so we took those down.
Who was it?
Who poked? I had no idea. I wasn't hanging out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, well.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very
Okay.